Hey friends, we have finished our project and it is time to now back our hoop. You need to have your felt circle, you need to have an iron, and you need to have a glue gun, plus some fabric scissors. You do want to have some bigger scissors and not just your little scissors that you use to cut the thread. Now, our pilot friction pin does come off with heat. So what you want to do is, with your pattern still in the hoop, you want to get your iron and you want to just gently push down on your piece. Try not to just like as if you're ironing a piece of clothing, but you just want to kind of gently push it over. If your iron has a steam option like mine does, I really like to use that steam because it helps to get the pin marks out just a little bit faster. But you know, if you don't have that option, that's perfectly fine. And if you don't want to use an iron, you can use a hair dryer. You can use the sun outside if you really want it to take a while. There's a few different options. I mean, it is erasable from heat, so a steamer, anything. Anyways, once you've done that, you're going to look at your piece while it's still in the hoop and you're going to see if there's anywhere you need to still stitch. Sometimes we have a pin mark left somewhere, but we don't realize we need to stitch over it until we've removed the pin marks. So this is a good time to stitch any parts that still need stitching. Next, once you're happy with your piece and you realize you don't need to stitch anything, you might need to remove it from the hoop and center it. Mine, I tried to make sure that it was already perfectly centered, so I didn't need to remove it at all. So I'm not going to remove mine, but if you need to, you can just loosen this up, readjust, make sure it's perfectly centered, because after we do this next part, you will not be able to remove it from your hoop again. So once you're happy with it in your hoop, then we're going to turn it over. And we're going to cut away this first piece, the very thin cotton. I'll make sure I have this nice and tight real fast. And I will link below the video from last year's stitch along, the Easter stitch along, because I did have, I used my erasable pin there, and so it just might be a little bit better for you to visually see that. Whereas here I'm walking through the steps since I used a printed pattern. So once your hoop is exactly how you want it to look, it's perfectly centered, we're going to cut away this thin cotton and we're going to cut it all the way down to the hoop. So you can see here, it's fully cut down. Sometimes a little easier to hold it, but again, I'm trying to keep it where you can see it. It's always very satisfying if you managed to cut it off like an apple peel, so it all comes off in one nice little thing. All right, so once you've done that, you might need to go back and look and see if there's any other little spots that need to be cut off. I'm fine with that. Nothing's too hanging out too much where I mind. So next we need to cut our Kona, but our Kona we're not going to cut as close. We want to cut it so that whenever we fold it over, it doesn't hit our fabric, but we want enough fabric so that we're able to glue it to this inside lip right here. So we can cut just a little bit first and make sure, like, okay, let's push that side and see. It's good here on the left side. It's a little close there on the right. So I'm going to try and stick to this length right here. And we're going to just cut all the way around again. This is the method I prefer because I feel like when you leave this fabric and pull it over on the edge, it helps keep your fabric tight for years to come. I used to cut my pieces, all the fabric all the way down to the bottom hoop, and when I look back on those pieces, they are a little bit more saggy in the fabric, whereas all the pieces that I finished this way, which they've been years at this point, are not saggy at all. This one's a little bit harder to get cut into one little peel because I try to make sure I don't go too low anywhere. Okay, so once you've done that, you might want to go around and just gently push down. Make sure you haven't cut your fabric anywhere too long. I've cut mine a little too long there. These are not my normal fabric scissors, and it's showing. It's not cutting my fabric as well. This is a good note to you, to always have a pair of actual fabric scissors. Write fabric on them and only use them for fabric. Okay, let's see here. This can be cut a little bit more. Oh, that's my glue gun telling me it's turning off. We'll get back to that. Okay, so I think that's ready to go. And the next step, we are going to glue. So let me get my glue gun on and we can start that. All right, so what we need to do now is we're gonna add glue right to the top portion of this hoop, and then we're gonna push our fabric down. So working in small little increments, because you don't want your glue to dry before you're able to get around to folding the fabric down. I don't think I even got that much glue down just now. This is a new glue gun, and I'm still learning it. Okay, so just fold your fabric over. And if you see there's some spots that it's not meeting the hoop flush, I'll explain what you can do to fix that in just a second. Don't worry about fixing it right now, just worry about getting all the glue on there and your fabric folded down. Almost there. I do prefer to keep this down on the ground. I'm not sure why I was holding it. Okay, so once you've done that, when you see pieces like this, that one I probably didn't cut quite as far down as I could have, you can either try and trim that just a little bit, but also for the spots that are pulled up like that, you can put your glue gun just inside a little bit and put a little bit of glue right on the inside of the hoop rather than the lip of, well, instead of on the top, the rim. So here, not too much. That was maybe a little too much because you don't want the glue to end up getting down onto your piece. All right, I'm happy with all that. Let me use my scissors real fast and try and get a little glue away from my fabric. I had a little bit that was going a little too far down. I didn't want it touching the fabric. All right, next you get your felt circle and you just push it down in there. And if you want, you could leave it just like this because honestly it's not going to go anywhere, or you can do what I do and I just make 4 little glue spots and push it up against the side. So I'm going to just glue this little corner, not corner, I always say corner every year. It's not a corner, it's just one of the spots on the circle. You could put glue all the way around. I just don't think it's necessary, so I don't worry about doing it. And again, I get a little worried about glue getting onto the fabric. All right. Make sure it's all pushed down. All right, so that is how we have finished our piece. If you, I think I mentioned this in one of the videos, maybe about the stars, if you feel like when you put this up against something, you see the strings in the back too much, what you can do is you can get a piece of cardboard and cut it to size and stuff it in here, and that way when it is up against light, that cardboard is going to prevent any of the light going through, and so then you won't see any of the extra strings in the back. Again, as I mentioned in that last video, I don't tend to put this up against too much light that's coming through behind it, so it's normally not an issue for me, but that is an option for you. So, all right, you have finished your hoop and you are all done. Thank you so much for joining us in this process, and I can't wait to see your finished project.